The sun had long dipped beneath the horizon, painting the lingering sky in hues of deep violet and fading amber, as Evelyn, a woman whose white hair billowed gently from beneath her helmet and whose gaze held the quiet serenity of aged rivers, rode her rumbling Harley down an avenue now mostly devoid of the hurried world. A widow for many years, she had learned to coexist with solitude, carrying it like a venerable, silent travel companion. Each mile she traversed was a wordless conversation. With her past, each gentle curve in the road a subtle attempt to outride the persistent echoes of memory. The cool evening air, usually a balm against the day's warmth, now carried a crispness that hinted at deeper, unseen chill. Her small utilitarian workshop, nestled quietly on a less-traveled lane, was usually her destination by this hour. It smelled of motor oil, old leather, and the ghost of pipe smoke, scents that clung to the aged bricks and tools, each a silent testament to a life once shared. Tonight, however, the familiar pull of home felt different, a slight deviation in the magnetic field of her routine. As her custom-built cruiser, a marvel of polished chrome and dark, well-maintained steel, moved with its characteristic, almost melodic thrum, Evelyn felt a familiar ache deep within her chest, a phantom limb of connection reaching out to the vast emptiness that followed her husband's passing. She often wondered if the constant vibration of the engine was her own. Heartbeat amplified, trying to fill the quiet spaces inside. Her mind drifted, as it often did on these evening rides, to memories of her younger days, a vivid sepia-toned flashback flickering at the edge of her consciousness. She saw herself, vibrant and fearless, perched on the back of a similar, though less weathered, machine, her husband's strong arm a reassuring anchor around her waist. His laughter, a deep, resonant sound, seemed to reverberate through the phantom wind that now brushed her face. They had been inseparable, two spirits bound by the open road by shared dreams that felt as expansive as the horizons they chased. He had been the one who taught her not just the mechanics of the bike, but the philosophy of the ride, the freedom, the vigilance, and the unexpected brotherhood of the road. His weathered leather vest, still hanging in her workshop, held the faint scent of him, a constant, gentle reminder of a love that, though absent, was never truly gone. That vest, with its intricate hand-stitched emblem of an eagle soaring above mountains, was more than just fabric. It was a woven chronicle of their shared adventures. Now a different emblem resided in her pocket, a tarnished silver pocket watch, his last gift, its ticking, long-silenced, a miniature gravestone of time. Evelyn would often trace its cold, smooth surface with a gnarled thumb, feeling the weight of its stillness, a counterpoint to the vibrant hum of her own engine. She rarely looked at the hands, knowing they held no new minutes, only the heavy stillness of what had been. The world, in its swift, relentless current, seemed to have forgotten the rhythm of stillness, rushing past those who paused, those who mourned. Evelyn knew this indifference well, a cold shadow cast by a society too preoccupied to notice the subtle signs of a heart attempting to mend. Then something shifted, pulling her sharply from her reverie. A flicker of movement, incongruous with the usual urban quiet, snagged her peripheral vision. On the edge of the sidewalk, hunched against a cold brick wall, a small boy shivered, clutching a tattered backpack to his chest. People walked by, their faces averted, their strides unbroken, or perhaps they simply pretended not to see, their attention fixed on their own hurried destinations. The collective current of hurried indifference flowed around the boy, making him an invisible island in a river of humanity. Evelyn, without conscious thought, instinctively, decelerated, the powerful engine dropping to a low purr, then to a soft idle. The sudden quiet, broken only by the gentle ticking of the engine cooling, seemed to amplify the boy's solitary presence. He slowly raised his startled face, his eyes wide and uncertain, reflecting the faint glow of a distant street lamp. A knot tightened in Evelyn's throat, a familiar ache for unseen burdens. The rumble of Evelyn's engine, though now softened to a gentle sigh, had nevertheless pierced the fragile shell of silence the boy had constructed around himself. His gaze, a hesitant flicker of apprehension, darted from the gleaming chrome of her motorcycle to the weathered lines of her face. Evelyn, with practiced grace, born of countless stops and starts, removed her helmet, letting her white hair, usually contained, spill freely around her shoulders. She met his gaze with an unhurried steadiness, her eyes holding a deep, reflective warmth that seemed to contradict the ruggedness of her leather jacket. "Hey, little one, are you all right?" she asked, her voice a low, gravelly timbre that carried an unexpected gentleness. It was a voice accustomed to the roar of the wind, but now softened for the quiet vulnerability before her. The boy, startled by the direct question, by the simple act of being acknowledged, could only shake his head, a small, barely perceptible movement. His shoulders, hunched earlier against the cold, now tightened further, as if preparing for a blow. His lips, chapped and pale, moved almost soundlessly. "Nobody wants me around," he murmured, the words barely audible above the distant hum of the city. A profound weariness, far too ancient for such a young face, seemed to settle over his features. He hugged the backpack tighter, as if it contained not just his meager belongings but also the last vestiges of his shrinking world. Evelyn's gaze softened further, a quiet understanding passing between them, a silent recognition of shared weight. She knew the sting of feeling unwanted, the chill of being overlooked in a world that rushed by. She had felt it countless times in the grocery store aisles, in the impersonal lines at the post office, where her age rendered her functionally invisible to the younger, busier staff. She took a deep, measured breath, the scent of damp pavement and distant exhaust filling her lungs. Her hand, gloved in worn leather, slowly, deliberately, reached out. It wasn't a demanding gesture, but an invitation, a quiet offering of connection. "Sometimes the world feels too vast, too uncaring," she said, her voice a calm anchor in the turbulent sea of his fear. "But there's always a place for a heart that still beats, little one. Always." Her words, simple yet profound, seemed to cut through the noise of his internal apprehension, resonating with a truth he hadn't dared to believe. The boy hesitated, his eyes still fixed on her outstretched hand, as if assessing its potential for danger or deceit. His small frame trembled, not just from the cold, but from the raw unfamiliarity of unsolicited kindness. But Evelyn's gaze, firm yet undeniably gentle, held no judgment, only an unwavering patience that, against all his learned skepticism, slowly convinced him. He slowly, almost imperceptibly, uncurled his fingers from his backpack, and his small, cold hand finally reached out, a hesitant bird testing a new branch. Their fingers met, and a fragile current of warmth passed between them. With a soft, encouraging nod, Evelyn helped him carefully mount the back of the Harley. He clung to her jacket, his small body a surprisingly light weight against her back. The powerful machine, which moments ago had seemed an intimidating beast, now became a vessel of unexpected safety. As they pulled away, the wind, once cold and biting, now seemed to embrace them, cutting through the silence of the night, carrying them away from the indifferent street. The rhythmic thrum of the engine became a lullaby, a steady pulse that promised movement, a journey away from the cold wall. Evelyn felt his grip, tentative at first, then firming slightly, and a subtle shift occurred within her. The gnawing solitude, a constant companion for years, eased its grip, replaced by a nascent, unfamiliar sense of purpose. It was a delicate, almost imperceptible shift, like the first pale light of dawn touching a dark landscape. They arrived at her small workshop, a sanctuary smelling of grease, metal, and subtly of old memories. The concrete floor, worn smooth by decades of purposeful movement, felt solid and grounding. Evelyn, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone familiar with every tool and every shadow, flipped a switch, bathing the space in the warm glow of overhead lights. The workshop, usually a silent echo of her solitary tasks, now felt quietly expectant. "Come in, little one," she offered, gesturing towards a battered but comfortable armchair in a corner. The boy, still somewhat wary, took in the room, the rows of tools hanging neatly on pegboards, the spare parts glinting on shelves, the faint sheen of oil on the workbench. His eyes, however, lingered on the wall, where faded photographs, some framed, some tacked directly to the plaster, told a silent story. Among them, a particular picture caught his attention. Evelyn, much younger, vibrant and smiling, stood beside a man with a similarly open face and kind eyes. Both wore matching leather jackets, adorned with the intricate crests of an old motorcycle club. A spark of curiosity, a rare flicker in his guarded demeanor, ignited in his gaze. Evelyn, observing his silent scrutiny, offered a small, knowing smile. She moved to a small utilitarian kitchenette tucked into another corner, her movements fluid and unhurried. The aroma of simmering broth, humble yet inviting, soon filled the air, dispelling the metallic tang of the workshop. She poured the warm liquid into two mismatched ceramic mugs, the steam rising like gentle prayers. Then she retrieved a soft, worn towel, warmed by a radiator, and offered it to him. "For your hands and to chase the chill from your face," she said, her voice a soft command, an unspoken offering of care. He clutched the warm towel, pressing it to his cold cheeks, the simple act sending a wave of quiet comfort through him. "He was a biker too?" the boy asked, his voice still small, but now laced with a newfound curiosity as he pointed a hesitant finger at the photo of Evelyn's husband. "He was, yes," Evelyn replied, a nostalgic smile gracing her lips, tinged with the bittersweet echo of absence. "And he taught me something important. The strongest aren't those who ride the fastest, but those who know when to stop and lend a hand." The words hung in the air, a quiet philosophy passed down through generations of unexpected kindness. As they ate, the simple, nourishing soup warming them from the inside out, the boy gradually, hesitantly, began to recount fragments of his story. The bewildering abandonment, the cold, endless nights spent huddled on unfamiliar streets, the relentless, gnawing fear of being truly unwanted by anyone. Evelyn listened, her expression unwavering, her eyes absorbing every unspoken nuance, every tremor in his young voice. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. She simply listened, a silent receptacle for his sorrow and his fragmented hope. In each halting phrase, she recognized a profound echo of her own journey after loss. The desperate fight to survive an unbearable emptiness, the struggle to find meaning when the world felt stripped bare. A profound, silent bond, forged not by blood, but by a shared understanding of human fragility, began to knit itself between them, thin threads of connection weaving a new, resilient tapestry. In the quiet, purposeful days that followed, Evelyn's workshop, once a solitary echo chamber for her own memories, slowly transformed into a space of shared learning and quiet companionship. She had offered him temporary sanctuary, a small cot tucked into a warm corner, ensuring his immediate safety. But beyond the physical shelter, Evelyn, through her actions, began to offer something far more profound, a quiet, consistent presence. The boy, whose name, she learned, was Leo, carried himself with the perpetual vigilance of someone always expecting to be cast out. His eyes, though less startled, still held a flicker of apprehension, like a trapped bird perpetually seeking an exit. Evelyn understood this instinct. She had felt similar tremors of self-preservation in the early raw days of her own grief. She remembered how, when her husband passed, the world seemed to expect her to shrink, to disappear into her sorrow, becoming a shadow of her former self. It was a subtle societal abandonment, born of discomfort with grief, and it had left its own deep, invisible scars. She began by teaching Leo the unspoken language of the workshop, not with grand pronouncements, but with simple, concrete tasks. "Here," she would say, her voice calm, placing a soft cloth and a bottle of polish into his small hands. "This is how we make the chrome truly sing." With a gentle patience that bordered on reverence, she showed him how to wipe away the grime, how to coax a mirror-like shine from the dulling metal of a fender. His fingers, initially clumsy and uncertain, slowly gained confidence. He learned the satisfying weight of a well-balanced wrench, the distinct scent of various oils, the subtle artistry required to clean a carburetor without damaging its delicate internal mechanisms. Evelyn herself had inherited her mechanical aptitude from her late husband, a gift he had shared with her, teaching her that understanding how things work, how to mend them when broken, was a form of profound respect. Now, as she guided Leo's hands, patiently correcting his grip, explaining the purpose of each tool, she felt a dormant part of herself reawakening. The dusty old toolbox, which had largely sat undisturbed since her husband's death, now saw daily use, its contents gleaming once more. The immediate reward for her efforts was not spoken aloud, but manifested in the subtle shifts in Leo's demeanor. His shoulders began to relax, incrementally, imperceptibly. The frown lines that had been etched into his young brow started to soften. He started to smile, a hesitant, fragile blossoming that, like a rare desert flower, held an immense beauty. It was a smile that didn't yet reach his eyes, but it was a beginning. He would often watch Evelyn as she worked, her gnarled, strong hands moving with precision, her brow furrowed in concentration. He saw in her not just a rescuer, but a living embodiment of quiet resilience. Evelyn, in turn, found herself observing Leo with a newfound, gentle curiosity. She noticed the way his eyes would light up when a piece of chrome gleamed under his diligent polishing, or the quiet pride in his posture when he successfully tightened a bolt. His pure, unfiltered joy in these small accomplishments was the most genuine validation she had received in years, a stark contrast to the indifferent nods and hurried glances of the outside world. The activities in the workshop, mundane though they might seem, became a conduit for emotional deepening. As they worked side by side, the rhythmic clink of metal against metal, the soft hiss of a compressed air hose, filled the silences between them. These weren't empty silences, but rich, comfortable pauses, punctuated by Evelyn's soft instructions and Leo's occasional hesitant questions. The smell of oil and fuel, once a scent primarily linked to her grief-laden memories of her husband, slowly began to take on new associations, of shared purpose, of patient teaching, of a quiet, unexpected companionship. The weight of her luto, which had been a constant, heavy companion, now began to transform. It wasn't that the pain of loss vanished, but it began to reshape itself, softening, into a tender saudade, a bittersweet longing that carried with it the gentle warmth of cherished memories rather than the sharp edge of fresh sorrow. It was like a winter landscape, gradually giving way to the first tentative buds of spring, the dormant earth stirring with new life. Evelyn, accustomed to the methodical nature of mechanical work, began to apply the same observation and diagnostic skills to Leo's emotional landscape. She noticed the way his gaze would often drift to the street. Outside, a subtle tension in his jaw whenever a new vehicle approached. She observed the way he would flinch slightly at sudden loud noises. These were not just outward behaviors, but echoes of a deeper, unaddressed need for stability, for belonging, for a sense of permanence. He needed not just a temporary haven, but a belief in a future. This period of shared work and quiet observation became a turning point for Evelyn. She realized that her acts of kindness toward Leo were no longer reactive, simply responding to his immediate distress on the street. Instead, they were becoming proactive, a conscious choice to invest her time, her wisdom, and her dormant talents into nurturing another human being. It was a courageous offering, a step out of the carefully constructed shell of her solitary existence. She began to offer more than just shelter and basic sustenance. She offered continued mentorship, teaching him not just about bikes, but about patience, about the satisfaction of a job well done, about the quiet dignity of caring for something. Their connection, initially a fragile thread, began to braid into a stronger, more resilient cord. Leo, in his own small ways, began to reciprocate, not with grand gestures, but with thoughtful actions, neatly arranging tools, sweeping the workshop floor without being asked, or simply offering Evelyn a silent, appreciative glance after she shared a piece of her knowledge. This reciprocity was the first true crack in the wall of her isolation, allowing sunlight to filter into long-shadowed corners of her heart. Pause a moment. What dormant talent within you awaits the right person to awaken it? Share that small magic in the comments. The subtle shift within Evelyn and the nascent bond she had forged with Leo began, slowly but surely, to radiate outwards, gently altering the way the world around them perceived her. Her workshop, once a quiet, almost forgotten corner on the edge of the community, now held a different energy. The aroma of simmering soup, blended with the familiar scent of oil, sometimes wafted onto the street, a welcoming scent in a world often too busy to notice. Local residents, who had for years seen Evelyn only as the solitary old biker lady, now began to observe changes. Mr. Henderson, the owner of the small hardware store a few blocks away, a man whose hurried and often distracted demeanor previously made him an indifferent antagonist in her life, noticed her now. He had once barely made eye contact, rushing through transactions with a perfunctory nod, but now he occasionally saw Evelyn and the boy together, walking back from the small grocery, their heads bent in quiet conversation. He saw her smile, a genuine, unforced expression that seemed to chase away the deep lines of sorrow around her eyes. He noticed the way the boy would sometimes carry the heavier bags, a gesture of quiet chivalry that spoke volumes. Mr. Henderson, a man not prone to emotional introspection, found himself surprised by this new image, a subtle shift in his perception of the woman he had silently categorized as merely the widow. He reacted with a flicker of something akin to admiration, a silent acknowledgement of a transformation he couldn't quite articulate. The circle of Evelyn's influence, initially centered solely on Leo, began to expand. The meticulously maintained garden outside her workshop, once a solitary endeavor, now subtly reflected the collaborative efforts of two pairs of hands. Leo, under Evelyn's patient guidance, had developed a surprising aptitude for weeding and tending the resilient native flowers she grew. Their vivid colors, now brighter and more abundant, attracted the attention of passers-by. Sometimes a curious neighbor would stop, drawn by the unexpected beauty, and Evelyn, with a new ease, would share a gardening tip or even offer a small cutting. The soft, melodic clang of hammers and wrenches, once a solitary symphony, now occasionally included, the lighter, less forceful clinks of Leo's smaller tools. The boy's presence seemed to draw others in, breaking down the invisible barriers that her solitary grief had erected. One afternoon, a local community coordinator, Ms. Albright, a woman often seen rushing between appointments, embodying the well-intentioned but often impersonal nature of bureaucracy, visited Evelyn's workshop. She had received an anonymous tip about a child living in an unconventional environment. Ms. Albright, initially polite but clearly focused on procedure, approached with a professional detachment, her clipboard a shield against emotional engagement. She represented the subtle, systemic indifference Evelyn had so often encountered. This was a gentle confrontation, not of anger but of differing perspectives, the rigid demands of policy versus the fluid, organic reality of human connection. Evelyn, however, met her gaze with a calm dignity, a quiet strength that emanated from her new sense of purpose. She didn't argue or become defensive. Instead, she simply listened, her eyes reflecting the deep wisdom of her years. She allowed Leo to speak for himself, observing with quiet pride as the boy, whose voice had once been a bare whisper, now articulated his feelings with a nascent confidence. He spoke of Evelyn's kindness, of the things she had taught him, of the sense of belonging he had found in her workshop. His words, simple and heartfelt, were more eloquent than any legal defense. Evelyn then shared her own perspective, not in an accusatory tone, but with a quiet conviction, detailing the routine, the care, the education she was providing. She pointed to Leo's freshly polished shoes, to his clean clothes, to the drawings he had made for her of motorcycles proudly displayed. Her hands, though still gnarled, now moved with a new certainty, no longer trembling with the echoes of loneliness. This quiet, dignified response, armed with a new sense of her own intrinsic value, and supported by Leo's visible well-being, disarmed Ms. Albright's initial skepticism. The bureaucrat's expression softened, the hard lines of professional duty easing into something more human. She saw not a problem to be solved, but a connection, a living testament to unexpected kindness. She promised to facilitate a safe and supportive long-term placement for Leo, assuring Evelyn that her efforts would be recognized and respected. The silver pocket watch, which had long been a static symbol of her profound loss, now experienced its own quiet transformation. Evelyn had taken it to a skilled watchmaker in a neighboring town, a gentle artisan who understood not just gears, but the unspoken stories behind them. Now, instead of lying silent and still in her pocket, the watch was repaired, its delicate mechanisms ticking once more, keeping pace with the new rhythm of Evelyn's life. It no longer symbolized a stopped time, but a continuous, flowing present, embracing the past while forging a future. It became a bridge connecting her cherished memories with the vibrant new ones she was creating. The watch, once a private emblem of her sorrow, was now a quiet testament to enduring love and renewed purpose, a silent guardian of both old and new chapters. The culmination of Evelyn's quiet journey found its expression not in a grand spectacle, but in the subtle unfolding of everyday life, validated by the soft murmurs of community. Ms. Albright, true to her word, had found a compassionate foster family for Leo, one that recognized his burgeoning talents and cherished the quiet, resilient spirit Evelyn had helped to cultivate. It wasn't a sudden, public event, but rather a gradual integration, a quiet acknowledgement of Evelyn's transformative impact. The indifferent antagonist of bureaucracy, represented by Ms. Albright, returned to Evelyn's workshop a few weeks later, not with a clipboard, but with a small handwritten note from Leo, adorned with a childish, yet detailed, drawing of a shiny motorcycle. Ms. Albright's eyes, once cool and professional, now held a warmth that Evelyn recognized as genuine. "Evelyn," she began, her voice softer than Evelyn had ever heard it. "What you've done for Leo, it's beyond our usual protocols. He's thriving. He talks about you with such reverence. He's learned so much from you." It was an implicit apology, a recognition of her initial, perhaps too hasty judgment, and a public acknowledgement of Evelyn's profound, quiet work. This was Evelyn's validation, a celebration of her talent and her spirit, not in a grand hall, but in the oil-scented sanctuary of her workshop, witnessed by the silent tools and the lingering echoes of shared laughter. It was a testament to the power of a single, steadfast heart to mend the world, one small, forgotten soul at a time. A visually powerful scene unfolded one sunny afternoon, a direct and poignant contrast to the opening moments of her story. Instead of Evelyn being alone in her workshop, surrounded by the silence of her grief, she was now outside in the small, vibrant garden she and Leo had nurtured. She was surrounded by several neighbors who'd been drawn by the beauty of the blooming flowers, and perhaps by the subtle change they sensed in her. She was laughing, a sound that felt lighter, more resonant than it had in years. Her hands, once prone to a tremor of loneliness, now moved with confident grace as she demonstrated how to prune a stubborn rose bush. The sun caught the silver of her hair, making it gleam like spun moonlight, and her eyes, once holding the distant gaze of memory, now shone with a present, vibrant light. The silence around her was no longer one of emptiness, but of contented companionship, punctuated by the soft chirping of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. Then, a small yet profoundly meaningful detail. Leo, now settled in his new foster home, had started volunteering at a local community center, helping to organize a donation drive for children's books. He was seen by a passing mail carrier who recognized him, patiently explaining the importance of reading to a younger child, his small hand resting reassuringly on the child's shoulder. It was a small act, but it demonstrated that the lesson Evelyn had imparted, that when someone believes in you, it is your duty to believe in others too, had been deeply internalized. The circle of kindness, initiated by Evelyn's single act of stopping for an abandoned boy, had not ended with Leo's departure, but had expanded, a ripple effect of compassion spreading outwards, touching other lives, echoing the strength of his quiet mentor. Evelyn's journey wasn't about saving the entire world, but about repairing a single, fractured piece of it, and in doing so, mending her own. Her presence, once almost invisible to the hurried world, now held a luminous clarity, a beacon of purpose in the quiet landscape of her life. The workshop, though Leo was gone, no longer felt empty. It felt imbued with the spirit of shared learning and renewed possibility. The final scene returned to Evelyn, once more on her Harley, cruising along the winding back roads as the first whispers of twilight painted the sky in soft, bruised tones. But the silence that enveloped her was profoundly different. It was no longer the hollow, echoing silence of grief, but a deep, resonant peace, a quiet hum that spoke of contentment and newfound purpose. The engine's steady thrum was no longer a conversation with the past, but a rhythmic pulse of the vibrant present, carrying her forward, not away from sorrow, but through it, into a landscape of quiet fulfillment. Her headlight cut a clean, unwavering beam through the deepening gloom, no longer just a functional light, but a metaphorical beacon, illuminating a path of generosity she had unknowingly forged. The narrator reflected on how pain, often perceived as a barren landscape, could in fact become the most fertile soil for unexpected growth. Evelyn's journey was a testament to this truth. Her profound loss had not diminished her capacity for love, but had deepened it, transforming her solitude into a wellspring of empathy. The emptiness she had carried, a heavy cloak woven from threads of absence, had gradually, almost miraculously, been replaced by the quiet, nourishing warmth of connection. She had learned that healing wasn't about eradicating the scars of the past, but about integrating them, into the tapestry of a life well lived, allowing them to shape her into a more compassionate, resilient being. The memories of her husband, once sharp with the agony of his absence, now felt like soft, comforting shadows, a gentle presence rather than a piercing ache. She understood now that true strength wasn't about denying vulnerability, but about embracing it, allowing it to become a conduit for profound connection. And she finally understood. The most beautiful gardens are not those without weeds, but those where each flower has learned to grow around its scars, stronger and more vibrant because of them. Evelyn had cultivated such a garden, not of soil and blossoms, but of the soul, tending to the fragile seeds of hope in a young boy's heart, and in doing so nurturing the dormant seeds within her own. Her journey had taught her that the heart, though capable of immense sorrow, possessed an equally immense capacity for resilience and renewal. Her empathy, once a quiet, almost private faculty, had become an active guiding force, shaping her actions and redefining her place in the world. She was no longer merely a survivor of loss. She was a creator of hope, a quiet architect of small, significant transformations. The winding roads, which once felt like endless stretches of solitary contemplation, now felt like conduits, pathways connecting her to a wider, more interconnected world. The motorcycle, her faithful companion, had carried her not just across miles, but across the vast emotional terrain of grief and rediscovery. She carried the memory of Leo's small hand in hers, the echo of his hesitant smile, and the knowledge that her small act of kindness had rippled outwards, making a tangible difference. This was Evelyn's spring of the soul, a profound testament to the quiet power of a single act of kindness, echoing through the empty spaces and igniting new purpose. Her journey, born from the chill of solitude and matured by the warmth of unexpected connection, teaches us that the world, in its vast indifference, still holds pockets of profound humanity, waiting to be discovered, nurtured, and shared. Evelyn's wisdom, distilled from years of silent observation and the deep, persistent ache of loss, reminds us that the most significant transformations often begin with the most unassuming gestures: a pause, a question, an outstretched hand. If Evelyn's story has watered something within you, if it has stirred a forgotten hope or sparked a quiet resolve, we invite you to share that gentle awakening. Perhaps it has reminded you of a moment when someone stopped for you, offering an anchor in a turbulent sea. Or perhaps it has nudged you to recall a time when your own small act of kindness, seemingly insignificant, blossomed into something far greater. Leave a flourish in the comments below, letting us know you are here, resonating with the quiet strength of her journey. Tell us what you learned, what small seed of inspiration has taken root in your own heart. Do not let your own story, your own capacity for quiet heroism and profound connection, wither in silence. The world needs the subtle warmth of your empathy, the quiet resilience of your spirit. Let Evelyn's narrative be a gentle reminder that every heart, no matter how weathered by life's storms, holds the capacity to bloom anew and to help another garden flourish. Your voice, your experience, your shared reflection is part of this beautiful, ongoing tapestry of human connection